We're going to talk about three legal myths for MSPs today and how it's costing MSP thousands of dollars. And of course, Brad is our resident legal expert, and he is, we do the whole play of, chiropractor to the stars. Brad is, the attorney to the MSPs. We really got to come up with something a little more
Something
um,
snazzier.
snazzier. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't roll off the tongue very well, but
No,
yeah, we
no.
we need something. So we'll have to put our heads together and figure something out with that. But as we all know, Brad is the man when it comes to legal advice in the IT channel, and we are grateful for him being part of our community. It is an area, legal that we all must. Put some time and attention to because, while things are moving and we feel like things are in good shape for us, you never know when there's going to be a snag, right, Brad?
Correct. You never know. Things happen, like in any industry, right? Things pop
Yeah,
up, and sometimes those things can become expensive if you don't anticipate them.
exactly. And I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Brad for the next 15 minutes to jump in and start talking about that. After that, we will open it up to our general Q&A. And with that being said, Brad, it is
Okay.
all yours.
All right. So, hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. Thank you for having me. Happy New Year. Um,
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. So, in thinking about the various myths that are floating around out there, I came up with a list of like 12 or 13 myths, but I had to narrow it down to two or three. So I picked these three that you're about to see on my little whiteboard here. But these are not the only myths. These are just the three that we have time for, but we could follow up with a part two and a part three, whatever you want, about more myths in the legal industry. So the first myth I want to talk about. Can you read my whiteboard? I'm going to hold it down here so you don't see the other myths. Here, insurance. Okay. Legal myth. Legal myth is that insurance is too expensive to have and that you don't really need insurance in all situations and that we don't really need to review it because we don't do anything wrong and we know of all of our clients and we've known them for years. And so we're never going to be sued and we're never going to have a problem. It's just not worth the added expense.
Mhm.
That is a myth, obviously, and on several levels. First, just because you've had a client that you've been working with for a long time or clients that you've been working with 5, 10 years and so on, that doesn't mean that they're going to be your friend tomorrow, right? We're all friends until we're not friends. And when we're not friends, bad things happen. Okay. I used to give a presentation way back when entitled How to Not Be a Terrified MSP. And one of the slides that I used to show was a quote from an MSP. I will make it the PG rating here, but the actual quote was, "I can't believe that mother effer is suing me. I just went to his kid's bar mitzvah last year." That's true, right? And you can imagine, fill in the blanks. MSP had a client for years, went to the client's kid's bar mitzvah, ended up getting sued from 6 months later. So we're all friends until we're not. That's first. And you
That's
have
what
to
I
think
call
about it.
Frankie eyelashes.
Yes. Frankie eyelashes. I don't know if that's the, yeah, they call me eyelash for short. I don't know. It doesn't strike fear into me. So the idea is that insurance is something that you should not, well, first of all, you must have insurance. Okay. That goes without saying. It is not something that should be reviewed as a priority number 4 or 5 on your list of priorities. It should be reviewed and considered as a top priority. That's one. 2, for those of you who think, well, it's very expensive and I don't know if I can afford it, there are alternatives out there now, right? In the past 2 to 3 years, we've seen the advent of warranties, right? Issued by vendors like Cork and so on that complement insurance policies. They don't these are not meant to replace insurance policies, but they complement. And if I were listening to this and I thought about, well, I want to review my insurance, but I'm not sure, it might be very expensive. I implore you to not only look at the insurance, but look at the complementary services like a warranty, add that on, because the myth that, well, we're not doing anything wrong, we haven't been sued in 20 years, so I think we're going to be okay. That is a potentially company ending myth. So we have to divest ourselves of that. Questions, concerns, applause, whatever you want. Applause, I'll take the applause.
So the MSP that was sued, was that because of the lawyer?
The MSP out in California, the Mistigny case, I believe you're talking about. That's the one where there was a breach and the law firm sued the MSP, right?
No, I'm talking about what you just mentioned. They were friends, but then they got sued.
Oh, you're going with my hypothetical. Yes, they were friends and they got sued. And the guy said to me, he wasn't my client. He became my client once he got sued. And he said to me, I can't believe that mother effer suing me. I went to his kid's bar mitzvah. I should cancel the check. I don't even know if they deposited it yet. It was like that soon after the event. It ended up settling. But the moral of that story is that we really are all friends until we're not. And as they say in The Godfather, right? It's not personal, it's business. Well, that's right. It's not personal, it's business, and you have to protect your business. And don't think that something is too expensive to do it, because I'll tell you, the cost of insurance is far less than a retainer for me or any of my colleagues in the industry, right? The cost of insurance is far less than litigating or arbitrating an issue that maybe it turns out you didn't do anything wrong, right? So think about the risk reward, think about the potential liabilities, and address them. So that's myth one. We all need insurance and it's not too expensive. And there are complementary services as well. Okay. What else you got? I'm going to go to myth two. Seeing nothing. Okay. Myth two. Who was the guy who used to do the whiteboard? Chris on NBC on election night, passed away, unfortunately. Right. On election, he had the whiteboard here, right? That's me. I have my little whiteboard here.
Yeah.
Next, and you're viewing it backwards, I guess. But what it says is no explanation necessary. That's myth number two. Okay. I can tell you the most vicious, the most belligerent and expensive battles between an MSP and their customer always relate to a mismanaged expectation. And that mismanaged expectation is virtually always the result of no explanation, right? We don't need, the myth is we don't need to explain to our customers what we do in any great detail. We don't need to lay out, how things work. That's what, we're the experts. They're hiring us to do a job and we're going to do it. No explanation necessary. That has led to, I'm telling you, the most vicious and belligerent battles that I've ever seen. Because here's how it plays out. You as the MSP, you're offering A, B, C, and D. But your customer thinks that within A, B, C, D, you have included E, F, G, H, I, J, K, right? They think you've included that. You're just saying we're providing you A, B, C, D. And that gap in understanding, right? That disjoint in how people are looking at things, that is where the greatest amount of friction occurs. And friction leads to litigation. Litigation leads to lawsuits, and we don't want that. You want to make sure that the gap of understanding between what you're offering, okay, and what your client understands they're receiving, you want to make sure that gap is as small as possible. There really shouldn't be much, if any, daylight between your explanation and what they're receiving. So the question is, how do you do that? How do you do it? MSPs are caught between a rock and a hard place, because if they want to provide a lot of explanation, then they're going to put it in their quote, right? In the quote, the statement of work, proposal, whatever it is that they're sending out. The problem is that if you do that, your quote, your statement of work becomes 10, 20, 30 pages long as you're explaining everything you're doing. We don't want that. I don't want your quote, your statement of work to become a sales obstacle. Okay. I want to lower the bar of entry. So if we're not going to include it there, then maybe we just shouldn't write it at all, right? And let the chips fall where they may. No, we can't do that either. So you're sort of caught between too much or nothing. The answer that I suggest, and what I'm really imploring all MSPs to do in 2025, is pursue a services guide. A services guide. Think about it this way. When you buy a TV, when you buy a phone, when you buy them, pulling up random electronic devices here, it comes with a user manual. And that user manual serves a purpose. It's not just there because the company decided to create a manual and that's how it is. No, it serves a purpose. And the purpose is to tell you what that device does or what it doesn't do, right? What its limitations are, what the manufacturer expects of you to be able to use this phone, right? Or this television. Well, if you think about the services that you're providing as an MSP, you can create a manual, a services guide. And it can be vendor specific or it can be vendor agnostic, right? Because at the end of the day, the services that you're providing, pick any of them, it has common denominators with all other similarly situated services. So you could create a guide that explains what you're doing, right? Think about this. Let's take a backup situation. Straight up, backup. And this is an example I like to give when I speak in public. I've done it before. I'll do it now. It's now, about 12:20 p.m. Dan is my fictitious MSP. And, well, he's not fictitious MSP, an MSP, but he's not my MSP. All right, too much explanation. The point is, in this hypothetical, I call up Dan. I say it's 12:20. Dan, I got a client coming in 10 minutes. His files are gone. I need them back. Go. Right? Dan can't do that because Dan's going to discover when he looks into it that I've unmatched drives, right? I might be crypto locked, and it's about, almost a terabyte of information. But if Dan tells me, Brad, I can't do it that fast, I'll have it done to you by tomorrow. Well, Dan and I will have a problem, won't we? Right? Because he has allowed me as his customer to have this expectation that I can call him and say, Dan, you got 10 minutes. This is what I pay you to do. Go. You can't allow that to happen. Okay. That is where friction occurs. So to eliminate that, you need to have a guide. Let's take that situation. What if we had a guide that says, if we are providing you with a backup solution, great. Here's how it works. We're going to provide you with software agents from our designated third-party solution provider. Agents are triggered with a change in data. They don't copy personal information. Here's how often things get backed up. Here's how much. Here's where it's stored. Encrypted, at rest, in transit. Great questions. Here's our policy. Need to get your stuff back. Everyone needs their stuff back sometimes. This is how you reach out to us. This is what we will do when we receive a request like that. And these are our service level objectives to recover your data in the means in which it was prior to the incident. You've explained everything, right? That is what I want to see MSPs do. More explanation will result in less friction. Less friction means less money on attorneys. So myth number 2 is no explanation necessary. No, actually, a lot of explanation is necessary. Okay? This is a myth that could cost you a lot of money. Questions, concerns?
Reminder, when someone who has signed an agreement 2-3 years ago has an event, like we had literally this morning, my 5:45 phone call with, hey, we don't have any power. Yeah, you and half of Southern California. Oh yeah, it's a shit show.
Because of the fires.
Right. Well, it's not. It's the wind. They've got power shut off. But anyway, they had this exact problem like 4 years ago. Here are your options to fix it. Oh, that's expensive. Yep, that's expensive. Okay. So a day of downtime, just plan for that. Well, of course, that server is now in my office with its firewall so that they can VPN into it.
Yeah.
But that's out of scope. That
Yeah.
is absolutely, and I mean, because we had the event before, we made sure it was in their contract. Yeah, acts of God are not covered. That is an out of scope situation. But I had to
Yeah,
remind them today, this is out of
you're right.
scope.
You're right. Very often, and this is something that you should think about in a guide. You don't just want to explain what you're doing. You also want to explain what isn't covered, right? Explain the parameters of a service and don't leave it too open-ended, because whenever you have an open ending, that will be interpreted by the customer in the light most favorable to the customer. And we don't want that. So it's often um, uh, advisable. In fact, it's virtually always advisable to say what you're doing, what you're not doing, and list some exclusions that you think a customer might reasonably think might have been included. If it's not, list it, make it clear. Yeah, for
And on
sure.
that note, Brad, I remember several years ago, I don't even remember what the purpose was, but I was at a BNI meeting, and this is a long time ago, and I remember there was a vendor there that, said, "Hey, in the state of Michigan, if it's not included, it's excluded." And I think, you know, even if that is, a law, I don't think that's really the right approach, because you want to
Yeah.
give scenarios so that you're it's a little bit more black and white. Obviously, there's still going to be some shades of gray, but you want it to be as black and white as possible. And not just say, well, if it's not something like this, then it's not included, because then it's just a big black hole, and the client's going to be wondering. And if we can eliminate any of those questions, we're on the right track, right?
Yeah, for sure. I know a law in Michigan or elsewhere that says if it's not included, then it's excluded. That is, whoever said that is probably thinking about maybe case that has been interpreting contracts, right, strictly, meaning if it's in the contract, you get it. If it's not, it's not. The problem is there's a lot of gray area. Okay, I was
Yeah.
reviewing, for example, an MSA this morning, in which the MSP promised endpoint protection and response. Now, endpoint protection and response. What is response? Okay, depending on if it's my system, I'll tell you what I want response to be, right? I want response to be immediate quarantining. I want a forensic team looking into why this happened. I want you to put in all kinds of parameters to make sure nothing like this happens again. And if I've lost data, respond to that. Help me, get it back for me, right? I could keep going the definition of response. If you're the MSP, response might be, we've detected it, we've tried to quarantine it, and we'll let you know what we found. Maybe that's response. But the difference in what I believe as a customer and what the MSP is offering me as a business, that's where we're going to have a problem. And again, when it comes down to IT services, there are very few fender benders, right? Very few. It's not like, oh, a little thing happened, it was no big deal. We got attacked, we got hacked. It's not. It's not a fender bender. It can take down systems. It can, right? Crypto lock data. There's a lot of these incidents are usually major accidents, and that, okay, is going to trigger your customers saying, we're going to look for every ambiguity and put it in the light most favorable to ourselves.
So, like in this case for Eric, even though it's out of scope, if the client says, "Hey, yes, I want to go ahead and have you move my server and firewall to your location," essentially that's a new service, and so there should
Yeah,
be a contract for that, right? An agreement.
right.
So is that something that you would want to have in your, contract that originally that they signed, that if you need this, then then we'll execute this? Or is it going to be a new contract that maybe in commercial break you have in MSP terms that that you have available that you can pull up and shoot over to them?
So, all right, if you have a single MSA that is your constitution that protects you for all things that you're doing, whether it is that which is in the quote if there's stuff that you've taken on, might not be in the quote, it's all going to be that MSA, okay, is your constitution. Now, each service that you offer, connection is unstable. You can still hear me? Still see me?
On and off.
Yeah, it
Okay.
is. I was going to ask if that
Definitely
was
choppy.
my side or if everybody's experiencing that. Yeah.
So just hear me okay?
Yeah, maybe turn your video off.
I'm going to turn my video off. Hang on.
Preserve
That
bandwidth.
Stop using
Help.
dial-up internet.
could be.
AOL.
Did that help? Hear me now?
We can hear you
Mostly.
mostly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mostly. All
Now
right.
your video.
There we go.
Okay. Is this better now? Are we
Yeah.
okay? Or all right.
Yeah.
So in my view, you need to have an MS that then you quote stay. Wait, there's me again.
Yeah. We're breaking up again.
How about this? I'm gonna even come back in.
Okay.
Hang
So
on.
let's talk about Brad as he leaves.
That's right. Yeah. So I can do a little filler. He did my MSA. And
Okay.
we do have that exact provision in there for if it's not in the scope of services, here's the rate it bills
Okay.
at and everything. So
Yeah, so like in this case, do you do like a per hour? Because obviously they're
Yep.
consuming bandwidth and power, and there's the value, the time of the value that, or the value of the time that you're providing to them. So is it hourly basis?
yeah, I mean, we will charge it on an hourly basis to light it up here. I mean, the customer pulled their own server. I told them, okay, here's what the firewall looks like. Bring me that, so we don't have to redo the VPN stuff. We just had to change a host name, and bring that to my office. And once we get it there, we'll reconfigure it to use one of our existing IP addresses. So we'll probably just bill the time. I mean, they're a good managed service customer. They got 10 users, and we charge them like $3,800 a month. So yeah, they're a good customer.
Yeah, no, that's great.
But they won't.
Per head. I mean,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, I think if you, that's where you make some exceptions. I mean, if you're charging in, an exceptional amount, like we have a CPA firm that, we're charging around $400 a month per user. We're gonna just, like if we had to do something like that, most likely we would just include it.
You're just gonna eat it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's kind of the situation that we're in. We charge them enough that, but yeah, the infrastructure project they didn't want to do suddenly back on the table.
There you go.
The point shouldn't be
Hey,
lost that
sometimes-
they had an issue. You told them, hey, here's a solution. No, we don't want to do that. So you almost
Okay.
have to.
Yeah, in those
charge 'em at this
cases,
point.
if you did say, hey, this would be the ideal way to ensure some level of business continuity, and if they decide, hey, I don't want to spend this, then there needs to be a cost associated with it, because otherwise, I mean, there is no free lunch, right?
Right. And if they were saying, what are the odds of that? We'll take our chances. Okay,
Right.
they took their chances.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
And Brad is back here. Brad,
I'm
let's,
back.
all right.
All right. Can you hear me and see me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, fair enough. Bad things have happened when I have to go off of Wi-Fi onto a hotspot. So, okay. Go figure.
Yeah.
All right. What I was saying was that an MSA is your constitution. Okay. That governs everything you do. So in the case of Eric's situation, where a client then calls up and says, I need you to do this, whatever it might be, and it's out of scope. What I would suggest is that you issue a quote for that service. Okay. The idea being that the quote will start off by saying, this is governed under the terms of our MSA located here, wherever it is. By accepting this quote, you accept that. Any questions, let us know. And the concept is that then you're going to give a quote for every additional service that you're going to provide. Why? Why is it important to do that? Why not just simply say, this is easy enough. I'm just going to pull the server, or I'll spin it up in my office. The answer is because you could be accused of wrongdoing even on the simplest of services, right? The simplest thing, right? It's out of scope, but hey, I want you to come in and install a printer in my office. And you come here and you trigger a crypto virus.
Yeah.
Who am I going to blame? I'm going to blame you. And you'd say, but I didn't do it. It would have triggered anyway. Well, you're going to wish to hell you had an MSA in place. So in my view, it's okay to do these kinds of ad hoc projects for your customers, but make sure that all of them are cited in a quote, and that quote is always a statement of work, whatever, and it's always governed under your master services agreement. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, the fear there is, as simple as doing, an assessment. Maybe you're just doing a tour of a prospective client, and the server's right there, and you're like, oh, let me just take a quick peek. I mean, the moment you do Control Delete to log in, I mean, there is that liability there, right?
Yep. The moment you touch a system, right? They teach you in law school, if you touch a document, you own it. That's what they teach you. If you touch a document, you own that document, right? Even if you say, well, I only reviewed it as a favor, but no, if you touch that document, you own it. Same with a server or any other device. If you touch that network, you own that network. Make sure you're protected.
Because and the joke has always been, having a client say, hey, ever since you've been here, our microwave isn't working, right? Anything could happen, and it's just that perceived fault, towards us, and that can make or break that next step with that relationship, whether it's an existing client or a prospective client.
For sure.
And yeah,
for sure. So, okay. Any other questions, comments before I reveal number 3?
Yeah. So in that situation, it's 5 a.m. We're not open. It's an emergent situation. And we have excluded the service in our statement of work, or that service in our statement of work.
Yeah.
I have no way to provide a quote to him because he's got no internet service. No way. He has no way to sign off on it. How do you protect yourself with that situation?
Well, a couple of different ways. All right. First, to the extent that you can, it's funny because you've piled on, not because you're making it up. It is what it is, but you're sort of piling on. And this also happened. And then this also happened, right? They don't have internet and there's no way they could get to a computer and they're running from the fire. And okay. And I get it, right? That's what's going on in reality. So the advice that I'm giving is, for the 99.9% of the time that things happen. But what I would also suggest is that if you are in an area, like maybe you are, or you're dealing with customers that have these types of emergency situations, frequently, fires, earthquakes, whatever it might be, then perhaps in the MSA itself, we should be putting a provision about handling emergencies, and that you understand that from time to time, due to logistics, due to environmental factors, whatever it might be, we will be unable to cite a quote or provide you with a quote or statement of work in advance. Nonetheless, you agree that all of these emergency remediation type services will be governed under this agreement. It's the best you can do. Because I understand you're not going to, and I'm not suggesting that you walk away from the client saying, I can't get this in a quote, too much liability. No. What I am suggesting is minimize the risk, albeit it might be a low one, but minimize the risk that they will accuse you of doing something wrong, even when you had the best of intentions.
Right.
Yeah.
So add that to my MSA.
We might do that.
And everybody else's.
We might do that.
Well, I guess, can I push back a little bit and just say, would it be unreasonable? And this, I guess, question is for Brad or even really Eric, would it be unreasonable to say that, he still has a a cell phone. I would assume that, he has internet connectivity. Maybe not. I don't know. Like, maybe there's outages of cellular where he could get an agreement
Yes.
sent to him and he could
Well,
sign off in
or
his
not
phone.
even
Okay.
that.
So
It doesn't
I'm at
even
my house that has no power. I have no way to write the agreement. It's
yeah.
6 a.m.
Well,
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
even if you wanted to, a simple text that says, we're going to do this subject to the terms of our existing agreement with you. We're going to handle this on an emergency basis. We'll deal with the details after. Something, that you could always that you have a foothold. Again, I understand that this is the weird kind of situation,
Yeah. It's
but
very
if
specific. Yeah.
but if you're dealing with customers that you think are litigious or high risk situation, well, cover yourself the best way you can.
Yeah. So
Right.
let me ask. So okay.
Yeah.
So here's the rub. He didn't call my cell phone. He called my office phone system. All our calls are recorded. So that entire
There
call
you
was
go.
recorded. I have
Yeah.
it recorded.
Okay.
Is that
So yeah, it's on recording where he's requesting that you provide a service.
correct? And
It helps.
and me pointing out this is out of scope. There will be a charge. That's all in that conversation.
Yeah, I think that the way your MSA is written, that would be covered. It certainly gives you the foothold to say, this was not something we offered to do for free, right? This is not something that we offered to do, that we were going to do great due diligence and look into all the underpinnings of it. We're handling this on an emergency situation. You understood it. Yeah, save the recording.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
And Brad, is this something that, so if you do have other alternate things like this, where you're going to become essentially a data center, like in this case for the client for, on an
Right.
hourly basis, um, with your new platform, MSP Terms, is this something that you could then have available in there that you could fire off? Could you give us a little bit of background on
Oh,
MSP
sure.
Terms and,
Sure.
and where it might help in these scenarios?
Sure. So, and I appreciate that. So, MSP Terms is a document management and business strategy tool that is engineered for MSPs. And the idea is that it has several solutions within the platform. And yes, it could absolutely help in this case. The central tenet of the platform is that you should be able to post documents and offer them to your customers in a credentialized, non-public, non-indexable manner. You should be able to link and log and track when your when your customers are doing anything with your documents. And the concept is that since it's cloud-based, it can be done from anywhere. So in this particular case, let's say you could easily post something on the platform and tell them log into the platform, type in this document code, accept it from wherever you are, from your phone, let's say, right? They'll be able to access it and read it on their phone and hit I accept if that's what you wanted to do. The other, I guess, a couple of other solutions that are offered through the platform are that it has a library of Brad Gross curated documents. So if you're not sure how to word something that you're looking for, okay, you're going to go into the library, you're going to see 15, 16 different documents in there that you can take, cut, paste, do whatever you want with them, put them on the platform and offer them to your customers. And they are yours, by the way. They're not licensed to you. If you're a subscriber, use them. I don't retract ownership of them if you no longer use the platform. And then there's an area all about education. In fact, addressing exact issues like this. There are videos up there talking about how to negotiate things, how to handle emergency situations, how to deal with fee increases when you might not have covered that in your agreement properly, and so on. So we have a lot of education in this platform. And as well, you have that document sharing, credentializing solution as well.
Okay, perfect.
You want business myth number 3?
Yeah.
Ta-da! You're not going to be able to read this, especially backwards. Fear is a good business model. That's the myth. Fear is a good business model. I talk to anywhere from 5 to 7 MSPs a week, new MSPs. And, you travel a lot. I speak, right? And when I ask them about the services that they're offering, and I ask them things like, tell me about the security services you're providing. Tell me about the compliance services you're offering. We don't do compliance. Why? It's too risky. No, you're leaving money on the table, right? Pick any service. If you're not offering a service because you think that the liability is too high or it's too risky, well, then you haven't spoken to your attorney lately. Because at the end of the day, MSPs and their customers, that relationship is a creature of contract. I've said this before in your show. It's a creature of contract. Whatever the contract says is how you are going to allocate responsibilities, allocate liabilities, and so on. There is no service. And I've been doing this a long time. I'm on my 24th year counseling close to 8,000 MSPs, a long time. I have yet to see a service that I would say, you don't go down that road. That's filled with landmines. It's of course not. You should be offering every service that you could get money for. Okay. The concept, however, is that make sure that your agreement allocates responsibilities, makes sure that the customer's expectations are managed. And once you do that, there is no compliance as a service. Offer it. There are so many third-party solution providers, good ones, right, that offer compliancy as a service. You're worried about what? About what? About the upstream provider failing to do something? That should be covered in your MSA. You're worried about what? The customer not understanding what it's supposed to do and it falls out of compliancy? That should be covered under your MSA, right? All these things can be covered. So the myth that fear is a good business model, we're going to stay away from things that scare us and we're only going to pursue, endpoint protection and maybe some awareness training, but you're leaving money on the table. In this day and age, fear is not a good business model. There is nothing you should be scared of. There is no service that you shouldn't be offering, but you got to make sure your contracts allocate responsibilities properly.
I go back to when I was first starting to become an MSP and sales rep with one of the vendors. One of the things he told me is he says most of the things that you're fearful of never happen, never become an issue. And that's essentially you're going to hold yourself back from, driving some revenue and taking care of a client and potentially losing out because maybe a competitor comes in and is able to provide a more comprehensive solution. The key thing he did say though is that doesn't mean that you don't, ensure that your MSA covers your butt though, right? So, don't let fear hold you back, but, still you got to make sure that you're covered legally.
Right. Well, and also, look, you don't bite off more than you can chew. Bring in good vendors, right? Bring in solution providers. If you know how to if you're a damn good plumber, okay, don't just assume, well, I understand plumbing. Let me take a look at your circuit breaker box and figure, because, I could, you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. But the idea is that you're not providing these services anyway. You're facilitating them. You're reselling them. Other people are providing them. Other people are offering them. So that's, it's a different paradigm. Offer it. Introduce them to these third-party solution providers. Make money off of it. Allocate responsibility. Manage expectations correctly, and then go with it. There's no service that you should be too scared to offer. That's
It's funny you brought up compliance as a service because I had dinner with Al Alper last night from CyberGuard 360.
CyberGuard 360.
He's implementing a compliance as a service part of that platform now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them. There are so many solution providers that do this, and they're all very good. I mean, I'm not endorsing anybody. I'm not endorsed. I'm just simply saying you could look. Al's a great guy. CyberGuard 360, great solution. So the point is that MSPs, if you really want to expand and grow, and so you're going to get into these areas, compliancy, security, right? Expanded security services and so on. Don't be scared of, well, what if this happens? Well, that's why you have a contract, right? That's why you have insurance. That's why you have warranty. Remember the top thing here. And well, what if they don't understand? Well, Remember explanation? That's why you're going to have a contract and a service guide that explains what they should do, what they need to know, and that's it. And then run with it. Yeah, for sure.
How about those cases where, you have a scenario you need to go over with a client, and where do you stop short of saying it's in the contract, right? Because I think if you use those terms, it can essentially create some, you
Tension?
know, tension. Yep. It can start going down the wrong path. So
Right.
how best to address those scenarios without using those words, it's in the contract.
Sit down and talk, explain it, right? Because you're right. What you are protected from and what's in the contract is one thing, but it's another thing to say, hey, this is covered. Read your contract. That's not the most diplomatic way to go about it. So, I think that MSPs, when they're offering solutions, third-party solutions to their customers, which is most of what they do, they really need to understand those solutions, right? Understand them, be able to explain them, be able to talk about them. At the same time, make it very clear you're facilitating this, right? This isn't what you're doing, you're facilitating it. But a lot of MSPs sort of jump in and they don't quite understand the technologies that they are licensing and so on. And that leads to, your customers will detect that you don't actually understand what you're talking about, right? You don't actually understand the parameters of a service. You don't want to be in that situation. So educate yourself. And by the way, there is no reason. Here's something, right? This is not a myth. This community, okay, is huge. There are platforms like this one, okay, really like the webinar we're doing now. There are industry events almost every day, it seems. You can be networking with your fellow colleagues in the industry. If you don't understand something or you say, it's weird, client once asked me this, how would you address it? There are so many community chat boards. This community is so great that you really should be spending time every day involved in the community, not just because you might have a question for somebody. Someone might have a question for you. And
Yeah.
this community is unusual in that if you look at any other professional service industry, doctors, lawyers, accountants, they don't have this. Really, they don't have these kinds of industry events. They don't have chat boards devoted to, hey, I had a client that needs this. What do you think? That's very rare. In this community, it's the norm. So
Yeah.
everyone who's listening should get involved in the community. And if they're not sure about what something is or how to handle, talk to the community. Use those resources.
I think part of that is driven by such rapid change that we have, whereas accountants and stuff, it's kind of, the tax code changes, but that's about it. But we're constantly getting new stuff thrown at us. So you kind of have to be involved in the community at some point,
Yeah.
Well, but I think there's a very large population of MSPs or people who we consider to be MSPs or solution providers, how you want to shine it up, that don't participate in any of this stuff at all, though.
Yeah.
It's too bad because they're missing out on a lot of free and good information.
Right.
It's again, just attend any of the major conferences or even the smaller ones, okay,
Right.
that take place in local venues. You can learn so much. You'll have 20, 30, 50 MSPs, your colleagues sitting there, and you all have the same questions, right? You all have the same fears and so forth. This is a great community to become involved in, and it eliminates I'm not sure how to handle this. I'm just going to talk my way out of it and hope the customer doesn't detect that I don't know what I'm talking about, because the customer will detect it. They always detect it.
Everybody learns. I mean, when we speak with vendors, when I speak with vendors, I say, specifically talking about everything MSP, the number one objective when I started this in 2017 was to allow MSPs to learn, share, and grow. Because essentially, many MSPs feel as if they're on an island to themselves and that their problems are unique to themselves, when in reality, it's many MSPs have either experienced it or are currently experiencing it. And when you collaborate, you can help work through that. And, the other thing too is, we've got aspiring, growing, and mature MSPs, and they all feed off each other. One might say, well, what does a mature MSP need to be involved in, and what are they going to gain? Well, let's face it, the more mature you become, the more complacent, and this is not across the board,
Right.
but the more complacent you can become. And I think a lot of the mature MSPs learn from those that are aspiring and growing. They can see that those fresh ideas and, and different thought processes. So they learn just as much as, those that are, just starting out or, in their growth mode.
Agreed. Agreed. I have nothing to add to it. You're right.
Yeah. So we
Mhm.
have a few more minutes left. Does anybody have any questions? Whether it be just some general legal questions, the questions about the myths, or if you have any questions about Brad's platform MSP terms.
I could bring up one.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
So,
Actually, Mike just
oh, go
went off
ahead.
mic or went on mic. So
There was only one thing I was thinking about when you were talking about, hey, don't be afraid to take on stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I'm halfway through the pumpkin plan for MSP edition, and they talked about dirty money, and that's taking on stuff that only you can do, where you're just limited in your time because they're just booking your time exclusively. And so with that in mind, like there's some services where like if it's just you pouring over the document doing the audit, you're the only one qualified to do it or something like that, then I might say, okay, maybe not do that because your company isn't mature enough where you've got somebody else to do it. So you're just run yourself ragged, taking on more than you can.
A lot of MSPs, in their zeal to get the deal in the door and make their customers feel more secure, they take on solutions that are or issues that they shouldn't be taking on, for sure. By the way, we see that in lawyers too. Happens all the time, right?
Yeah.
How many times do I go to a conference and I'll say, who has an MSA? Right? They all raise their hand. Say, okay, the person who wrote your MSA, did they also do your will? Right? Did they also do the real estate closing for your house? Oh, yeah, okay. And that's an example of a lawyer involved in something that he shouldn't be doing. The same way I'm not doing a real estate closing. All right. Not if you want to own your house, you don't want me doing it. The point
Come
is,
on,
you got to know what you know.
you don't want that sweet title insurance premium.
Exactly. You got to know what you know and you got to know what you don't know. And you have to really understand that, because you're right. Otherwise, you're going to bite off more than you can chew. You're going to waste your time and you'll probably expose yourself to liability. You don't want that.
So Brad, for your office with um, all of the calls and stuff you must be getting because you're so prominent in our industry, what does your staffing look like to be able to answer the questions and stuff
So
and the
we have
work that comes in?
We have 6 people here, and if I could find a 7th, I would, that are available to answer these questions. We have, all of the people in my office, maybe with the exception of the front desk receptionist, and I'm not making a joke, but that exception, they are all extremely tech savvy. My paralegal, for example, who put this on my calendar, okay, he programs in 3 different languages. So the idea is that, we don't have to go outside the firm to figure out and understand what's going on in this how does this technology work? We know how the technologies work. Now it's a question of protecting you. So that's our approach.
Okay. So you're the only licensed attorney though, or you
No.
have a, okay.
No, there are 4 other licensed attorneys that we work with here.
Okay.
One is, well, she was sitting off camera a moment ago. I would have introduced her, but she walked out. So she couldn't take it anymore. She left.
Okay. So it
Shauna
doesn't,
was here a moment ago.
She's
if
got to listen to you every day. So
No, I don't blame her for walking out. No.
Yeah.
So if someone has an issue and you're at some conference on stage, there's somebody else there to answer the phone.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even though Brad is the face of the organization, you are not the organization.
No, I am not the organization. No,
Yeah.
it would be impossible to be the organization.
Right.
You can't run a software platform and run a law firm and also have a life, by the way, and be, and do everything we do. So no, we have others, and they're all tech savvy.
Brad, with MSP terms, I know you've done some demos. Do you have a regular schedule for demos that you do?
So we don't have a regular schedule, but I mean, I know some companies do like every Thursday at 1 o'clock, they'll do it, and maybe we'll do that at some point. But right now, if anyone sends an inquiry to info@mspterms.com, info@mspterms.com, or email me, brad@bradleygross.com, and say, I want to see a demo. We'll get you hooked up. Within a few days, you'll have a demo. We'll demonstrate the management, the ability to share with customers, show you how you can log and track what your customers are doing with your documents. You'll see the library of documents we have there. We even have a service in which we, in fact, I'm trying to see, well, I don't know if we could pull it up on the screen now, but we even just added, because one of our clients said, you know, it would be really helpful if you could help us describe services. Like, we want to describe services. We want to describe how do, we're offering this and this and this. How do we tell that to our customers? Great. Just did that. Just came up with, if you let me here, I'll show you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, here we go. You see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. On the left, you see service names. On the right, service categories. Pick a category, pick a name, pick a category. Let's go Cylance. All right, click that. Here we go. From Cylance and Brad Gross curated. You want to explain what Cylance does? Here it is. Right?
So these are the elements to build your service catalog.
Correct. You want to know what Huntress Managed SIM is? Huh? That's a good way to put it right there. That's a good summary. You want to know about Qualisys? Here it is. So the idea is that we are constantly expanding and growing this platform, and we are nimble enough to respond to our subscribers' needs. So it's exciting stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, we are at the top of the hour, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Brad, as always, we appreciate your time and knowledge.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you for contributing. And I mean this to the community, because what you guys do here is really important. So thank you, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And just if anybody is not aware, tomorrow we do have a webinar at 3 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to talk about some data migration, whether it be on-prem to cloud, on-prem to on-prem, or even cloud back to on-prem, which, believe it or not, is a thing. So that is something we're going to talk tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And of course, we have our MSP discussion group call on Friday at 12 noon. So with that being said, everybody have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone.
So
Take
long.
care.